Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Theophilus Tuyeni. Um, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town, and also a researcher with the Cybersecurity Capacity Center for Southern Africa, C3SA. So today I'll be presenting a paper on the contextual factors influencing the cybersecurity commitment of government institutions in developing countries, focusing on Africa. So this paper is part of my PhD thesis, which looks at the factors influencing government commitment towards cybersecurity in Africa. And I'm using a case study of Namibia. Okay. This is the outline of my presentation. I'm not going to go through it. And here are the definition of some of the key terms that we have used in this paper. So I just want to draw your attention to the definition on commitment, which, according to Masrek, it's the extent to which top management gives full support and are involved in organizational initiatives on information security. So based on that definition, we follow the same pattern to define cybersecurity commitment as a dedication and sustained effort by government institutions towards achieving specific cybersecurity goals, objectives, and policy outcomes. And these manifest in the development as well as implementation of cybersecurity measures. Okay, recently we have witnessed an increase in connectivity as well as adoption of ICT in the continent, which shows a remarkable trajectory of technological advancement. However, despite this increase in connectivity as well as adoption of ICT, there has been rather a low level of commitment as well as maturity, especially in the African continent. And this increase in connectivity as well as adoption of ICTs has also ushered in cyber threats which has spread across the continent, affecting governments, individuals, as well as private organizations. So countries such as Nigeria and Kenya have suffered quite a significant financial losses due to cybercrime, and it's estimated at 649 million and 210 million US dollars respectively. That was in 2019. And some of the major cyber threats that the continent is facing, the ransomware, thing we have heard from the previous presenter on ransomware, business email compromise, online scams, those are among the major cyber threats facing the continent. Although several countries in Africa, are making efforts to really enhance their cybersecurity postures, they are facing several challenges. In this graph, I just want to show you how cyber attacks are distributed across the world per industry. That was in 2023 as per Statista. So again, you can see that the government is one of the industries that are mostly targeted by cyber attacks. And here I just want to show you the share of organizations that are affected by ransomware attacks worldwide between 2018 and 2023. As you can see that it's really going up, and it's alarming. Moving on to the problem statement. Okay, as I've earlier indicated that African countries have demonstrated over the years a lack of, commitment towards cybersecurity, as well as a low level of cybersecurity maturity. According to, the Global Cybersecurity Index of, the past years, African countries have really shown a lack of commitment towards cybersecurity. And also, when you look at the cybersecurity maturity assessment, which is normally conducted by the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center, and also what we do at C3SA, there is really a low level of cybersecurity maturity in the continent. Africa has become one of the main targets of cybercrime, and also being used as a launching pad of cyber attacks. And the estimated annual cost of cybercrime in the continent, it's about 3.5 billion US dollars, which is quite a huge amount. And as I've indicated, that governments are the most, among the top targeted industries in the continent. That is because of the higher volume of confidential information that they store. Although literature on cybersecurity is slowly emerging, there's still a paucity of literature that are focusing mostly on the government's commitment towards cybersecurity. So the purpose of this paper is just to provide an understanding of contextual factors affecting cybersecurity commitment of government institutions. And the main research objective is to explain how these contextual factors are affecting cybersecurity commitment of government institutions in developing countries. And we sought to answer the following research questions. How do technological factors affect cybersecurity commitment of government institutions in developing countries? How do organizational factors affect cybersecurity commitment of government institutions in developing countries? And how do environmental factors affect cybersecurity commitment of government institutions? So what is the literature saying about the commitment of government institutions towards cybersecurity? Well, so we are aware that ICT adoption is increasing at a rapid pace in the continent. However, despite this, many developing countries, especially in Africa, continues to demonstrate a low level of commitment. So ITU, through its Global Cybersecurity Index, uses these 5 pillars to measure nations' commitment towards cybersecurity, such as legal measures, technical measures, organizational measures, capacity development, and cooperative measures, which include issues such as cybersecurity and cybercrime legislation, establishment of institutions to deal with cybersecurity incidents in the country, the cybersecurity policies and strategies, as well as multilateral as well as bilateral agreement on cybersecurity issues. Okay, on the other hand, the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center uses a tool called the CMM, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model for nations to assess the level of maturities of nations. And they have 5 dimensions, which are cybersecurity policies and policy and strategy, cybersecurity culture and society, building cybersecurity knowledge and capability, legal and regulatory framework, as well as standards and technology. So these 5 dimensions are measured on 5 levels. Startup being the lowest level, and then we have dynamic, which is the highest level. So based on the assessments that have been conducted thus far, most of the African countries are between startup and formative, with few countries that are between formative and established. And I think one of the countries that are really doing well in the continent, Mauritius, Kenya, I think Rwanda and Tanzania. So those are among the top countries that are doing well in Africa. Continuing with literature review. So, so the lack of commitment which we are experiencing in the continent has resulted in really underdeveloped and poorly coordinated cybersecurity activities in the continent. And literature further found that cybersecurity is not a priority in Africa. So, which is really a concern, considering, at the adoption rate of ICT as well as connectivity. And further literature is saying that contextual factors are playing quite an important role in how cyber threats are managed, and also how their influence on the operation as well as performance of an organization. Hence, we opted to look at this contextual factor to determine how they are affecting the cybersecurity commitment of government institutions. Okay, looking at the context of the study, so we selected Namibia because it is one of the countries that over the years have shown a low level of cybersecurity commitment, as well as the maturity, a low maturity, cybersecurity maturity level. And we thought that, conducting this investigation, at least we will be able to determine how these contextual factors are affecting cybersecurity commitment of government institutions. Okay, so we use the TOE framework as a lens to assess the contextual factors affecting the government institutions' cybersecurity commitment. So we looked at technology, organization, and environmental factors, which we are saying that these factors influence the development and implementation of cybersecurity measures. Okay, so basically what we are saying here is that if we look at availability of IT infrastructure and compatibility, they influence the commitment of government institutions. For instance, in terms of the cybersecurity technology, such as intrusion detection or detective system and firewalls. And we are also saying that the cybersecurity skills as well as competence that is possessed within these institutions also influence their commitment towards cybersecurity. Furthermore, we are saying that an organizational structure of these institutions also play an important role in determining the management as well as organization of cybersecurity activities and initiatives, as well as the top management support. So when there is top management support, there is likely to be adequate allocation of resources towards cybersecurity initiatives, as well as the prioritization of cybersecurity. And when it comes to the environmental factors, we say that government laws and regulations create a conducive environment for these organizations to operate. And they also put pressure on these institutions to comply. Lastly, the perceived cyber threat also influence government institutions' cybersecurity commitment. For instance, how frequent, for instance, the attacks are, occurring in a country. This is the summary of our methodology, and I just want to draw attention to the sampling, whereby we have selected 5 government agencies and institutions that are responsible for cybersecurity in the country. And within those 5 government institutions, we selected 5 participants. And these were purposively selected. So data was collected through semi-structured interviews, which were both online as well as in person. We also reviewed some documents, such as a policy of these institutions, as well as budget, and also, annual reports. So data was analyzed using the thematic analysis technique with the use of in vivo software. This is just a summary of our respondents, whereby we have interviewed 3 top managers and 2 middle-level managers and 6 operational staff. So what did we find? In terms of technology, we found that software and hardware in public institutions were found to be or were outdated, and therefore lacked compatibility with new security standards as well as protocols. And we also found that there was inadequate budget for IT infrastructure development. We look at the past, the budget for the past 3 years, for instance, and it was more or less just the same, despite the need to improve IT infrastructure in the country. So when it comes to cybersecurity skills and competency, there was again a shortage of cybersecurity skills and competency within government institutions. And I think this is not only a case of Namibia, but it's a problem of the continent as a whole. I remember one of the presenters also alluded to the shortage of skills, if I can remember correctly. So it's a continental problem. Although there are institutions of higher learning that offer IT-related programs, most of these programs were mainly technical. Okay. Moving on to organizational factors, we found that these institutions did not have a dedicated cybersecurity department or unit to deal specifically with cybersecurity issues. So you have your IT department that was dealing mostly with anything related to technology. Also, we found that the current organizational structure for government institutions were not responsive to, to prevailing cybersecurity challenges. Okay, moving on to top management support, we found that there was really minimal support from top managers. And this was evident in the budget allocated towards cybersecurity activities and initiatives. When it comes to the environmental factors, we found that, okay, Namibia was still busy or still in the process of drafting, cybersecurity and cybercrime related legislations. And this has been going on for some time. As such, these institutions in the country could not perform their cybersecurity functions as these legislations would give them that power and mandate to perform their cybersecurity functions. In terms of cyber threats, we found that the perception of cyber threat was high. The country perceived to be vulnerable to cyber threats, and this is because it lacked cybersecurity measures to combat cyber threats. Okay, lastly, moving on to discussions and conclusion, is that the commitment in the continent remains very low, and we found that contextual factors such as technology, organization, and environmental are adversely or negatively affecting the cybersecurity development in the country. So with the increase in ICT adoption as well as connectivity, it is expected that governments pull up their socks and prioritize cybersecurity and come up with proactive measures to counter cyber threats. And the future direction for this paper is perhaps to include maybe more than one country and compare the contextual factors that are affecting, cybersecurity commitment of government institutions. So that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tuhini.
Yeah.
Any questions from the floor? Okay, we'll start with the first and then Prof.
You pointed out here to us that there's a lack of commitment.
Yes.
Are you going with your research into the why the lack of commitment is there? And I'm going to give you an example. In Africa, we're in the poorest province currently, right? Mm-hmm. And in Africa, I think one of the problems might be, I'm speculating, no evidence at all. Yeah. If you have a lot of social problems in a in a country, and you've got to say, where does my budget go? To the hungry, to the sick, or to cybersecurity. Those might be factors. So I don't know if you're thinking of going in that direction at some point to ask the why is it so different with us in Africa?
Yes, that's a good question. Definitely, within my thesis, I've ventured into that area. But you are correct to say that most of African countries are facing so many social problems, and they have to, prioritize, where to allocate these limited resources that they have. Is it to enhance cybersecurity posture or to, solve unemployment, for instance, and the poverty that is prevailing in the country? So it's a good point, but we tend to be so excited when we are hearing, for instance, digital transformation, when we're hearing fourth industrial revolution. We want to venture in that area, while we are forgetting that first we need to make sure that our infrastructures are protected. So yeah, it's what it is. I think we have to make that call and say, okay, we are facing a situation where there is, a rapid increase in connectivity, ICT adoption. We are under, cyber threats. Do we put measures to protect, our infrastructure, or we have to prioritize, solving the issues of unemployment or poverty? I hope I've somehow answered your question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. You've mentioned that in your case study at least, that they did not have, or the government, the institutions that you looked at did not have dedicated security departments. I realize your study has got to do with government, etc., so bear with my question because it might not, you might not have the answer. But what would be, what I'm wondering is, bar for the financial sector, how many organizations really do have their own dedicated security departments? Is government that different from the rest of the world or the rest of Africa, African organizations, if we then concentrate on Africa?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think if we had to compare government institutions with the private organizations, I think the private organizations have more, structured cybersecurity, units, because they would have, for instance, cybersecurity specialists, within their structure, and not just a general IT department, for instance, as compared to government institutions. Because when we looked at, for instance, the organogram of the institutions that we have sampled, they have an IT department, right? And those guys are mostly focused on maybe either acquiring, IT equipment, but not really, they don't have that expertise, or cybersecurity expertise, if that, makes sense. So to come back to your question is that governments, are lacking in that aspect. They need to have really a dedicated unit that deals with cybersecurity issues, like we have mostly in the universities or academia, and also in the other private organizations. So they have to think in that line because they are now mostly targeted. They, I'm sure we all heard about the case of Transnet and Ministry of Justice here, the incident that happened. So that shows the vulnerability of government institutions because of some of these issues. They don't have a dedicated, units that deal specifically with cybersecurity issues. I hope I've answered your question.
That's fine. I didn't expect you to have data outside of your study. Quite clearly, that would be ridiculous expense.
Yeah, yeah.
at least in South Africa, we have a dedicated cybersecurity teams. They might not be effective in government, but they are there. We've got departments.
Okay.
It's spread between the Department of Comms, Department of Defense, and the Intelligence Services, SSA. So it is here.
Oh,
They
okay.
may be just not effective, but that's a whole study on its own.
Oh, okay. That is good.
Thank you. Those are the only questions that we'll be able to take. I thank you, Mr. Tuyeni. Certainly great challenges to address, not only from a contextual perspective, but also, as I can see, other factors influencing this project, however, outside your scope of paper. Thank you very much.